Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Amplify Your Business. Today, we're going to be talking about HR, some of the challenges in HR. And with me today is Lea Carr, who is the CEO of Tilr. Now, Tilr is a software as a service, a SaaS-based product that is designed to help people with training and hiring, but it's totally novel. It's a very, very unique piece of software or tool that is at the disposal of HR companies who are looking for a different way to really upskill and recruit for the right kind of skills. But instead of me explaining it all, Lea, why don't you walk us through what Tilr is all about?
Sure. So we have two products. We have a smaller product I'll touch on first. It's called Tilr Hire, although it's a bit of a working name. We might change it. It's not too exciting. And that product, what it does is it goes into your applicant tracking software system, which typically works on keyword search, and it converts resumes and job descriptions into skills and then surfaces skills-based matches for recruiters. Right now, the average recruiter spends about 7.4 seconds looking at a resume. What are they looking at? Job title, company name. It's a lot of bias. What we're doing is breaking it down to skills and looking at, does this person have the experience? It's not about where they got it. It's about, do they have it? And so it saves a lot of time for recruiters and removes some initial bias from that, top of funnel sourcing stage. But our bigger product, and the one that we have, a little bit more focus on, is right now Tilr Talent. It's really about understanding the skills of your workforce. And so we use the same natural language processing we use in the first product, along with some really fun onboarding, to build a skills profile on every employee in a business. Right now, most businesses do not understand the skills of their workforce. They generally understand the skill that someone is using in that moment. They might have even forgotten something someone used 2 months ago. They definitely don't know what people did before they joined the business. Mm-hmm. And so now you have a skills inventory that's searchable and that you can use for so many different things. One would be temporary work placements. Oh, this 2-month project came up, like who can do these 3 things? You go in, you search, you find people. The skills for any job are changing. It's about 25% in the last 5 years, and the skills for any job will change by another 50% in the next 5 years. And so we're integrated with a dynamic job library. You can pull up a job, pull up your people in that job, and really identify the right ways to upskill, or in some cases, maybe reskill individuals, so that you can ensure that they keep full-time employment in your business, and so your business has the right skills to remain competitive. And then also, it's really important to have an employee-driven approach. And so we have, fun ways for the employees to go in, put in their ambitions, work with their managers on putting in, career goals, what the next step is. And then we surface the gaps between where someone is and where they want to go. And then we link directly into training through Coursera. You can take courses, the skills update automatically in your profile. So it's really a great way to sort of be energized by the skills you have, the skills you're going to have, you're learning. And it's just a much more engaging process for training and development. Then we have this other fun little piece of mentor matching. We believe everyone has something to teach. So everyone in the whole company, no matter how senior or, how new they are to the business, can, indicate the skills that they're comfortable mentoring. And then someone else can go in and search, I really want someone who can teach me these 2 things, and we'll facilitate those introductions. And of course, we allow people to set how many people they want to mentor at one time. Maybe it's 1, maybe it's 10, because people have other things to do.
Yeah, I think this is just absolutely brilliant, because there is such a focus on, what people are currently doing as opposed to what they want to do, or where their real skills kind of lie. And you're right. Like, I don't think in large organizations that I've been in that you really get an appreciation as to what that skills inventory is for each of the individual people on your team. And so by having this ability to go in and actually be able to match up people to the skills that they currently have, or helping them generate the skills or create the skills that they want to have. It's just what a great tool for employee retention. So good on you guys for creating such a novel idea here. Now,
thank you. And I think it's not just larger organizations. In a smaller organization, I don't want to say it's more important. I'll say it's important in a different way, because you don't have a lot of people. So if you have many people on your team and a project pops up, you don't necessarily have the resources to hire someone else. So it's really a great way to ensure you're efficiently using the workforce.
Yeah. And so speaking of that, so what size of company are you really targeting with this software then?
Yeah, so we are talking to companies, we really we want to help businesses. We want people to be in meaningful roles. So we've built it so that, a company as small as 15, 20 who really, really wants to work on, understanding and developing their workforce can use this tool. The majority of people we're working with now are in the, 15 to 20 up to 1,000 range.
Yeah.
But we did meet with enterprise yesterday and actually closed our first enterprise sale. So
Hey.
we've built something that is pretty sector agnostic, but through integrations can become sector specific. So we are integrated with Coursera, but if a company had built their own LMS, we've built our platform in a way that we can easily facilitate that integration so that they can use their own tools. So we can become an amalgamator of various learning sources for them.
Well, congratulations on the big enterprise level sale
Thank
that just
you.
happened. That's really exciting, a big milestone, I'm sure, right? And
Yes,
so,
absolutely.
yeah, and so just going back to the sizes, and so our company is in that 20 person range, and so it's really interesting, I think, anyway, in terms of the mapping out the career path and the training for a lot of our team members. And so I could see that being very useful for companies of our size who don't have a big HR department. I mean, I wear the HR hat currently as a CEO as well at this particular point in our evolution at Ample Media. But when it comes to really trying to ensure that we're seeing the skills upgrading and updating happening and the growth of our team, that's really important for me. And so that's something that I'm always really trying to, I don't know, beat that drum, so to speak, in terms of I want the workforce to always be constantly learning and evolving their skills, but it's really time consuming. And so in this situation here, where they can put in what they would want to be doing, it identifies the skills gap, and then it actually connects to the training that it's just, I'd imagine, one click and you're into a new course kind of thing. That must be pretty empowering for both the employee, but for smaller organizations that just don't have the resources to be able to manage that whole evolution of your workforce.
That's right. In a small company, it's basically not done because people think I'm too small, but you're never
Yeah.
too small to understand the skills of your workforce. And what you see in a lot of smaller companies is training as a perk. So
Yeah.
that, you'll see on the job site, oh, there's $1,000 a year for everyone to train. And I think one of two things happens in a small organization. The first is there's no actual corresponding line on the balance sheet. So no one's really talking about it. It's on that website, but then you kind of never mention it again. If someone asks, then maybe you agree to it. Or everyone's encouraged to use that $1,000, but they're going off and learning like who knows what, tying into nothing. And so you're investing, but then, an employee finishes a course and comes back and says, well, I want to use these skills. And you're like, oh, but we don't need them. And so our tool can also help match, the employee's aspirations with the needs of the company so that you can invest with more confidence and bring everyone really back on the same page. And to your point, with little effort, like you're focusing the effort on what matters, which are the conversations and the direction, not the administrative side.
Well, and I think like what you said there is really, really important to stress. And that is this idea of the employee going off, taking courses that don't actually apply back to positions within the company or their career evolution within the company. That's when you're going to see them leave the company more. So you're doing something great in terms of an employer supporting their training, their growth. But if you're not strategic about what kind of courses they're taking, you could potentially be encouraging them out of your company. And
that's right. And sometimes it's not a big deal. Listen, because you're going to train people, they're going to go somewhere else, but someone else is going to train someone who's going to come to you. So there's a bit of equilibrium. But in general, I think a lot of employees want to learn to grow in their roles in the company that's investing in them. So the better you can do at tying it together, the better it is for everyone's goals.
Yeah. Okay, so now you're not the founder. You are a
Right.
CEO that came into the company, and now it's your role to grow this, to launch these two new tools, to really start to, I guess, bring the company to a market-ready position, which it sounds like you're right on the cusp of that because you're closing some deals now. So
Yeah.
really exciting about that. But I would love to dig into a little bit about this role as a hired CEO versus the founder CEO, because most of the people that we are interviewing on the show happen to be founder CEOs.
Yep.
Now, the skill set that a founder has, talking about skills here, is oftentimes not the right skill set that they need to really grow and manage the company once it's at a certain stage. So I'm curious, as somebody who's come in as the CEO who wasn't part of the founding team, what point, I guess, within an organization's evolution do you think that hire needs to be done? So obviously you're going to have your own biases here, but I'm really
Yeah.
curious to hear, when is it ideal for a CEO to be hired?
Yeah, so it's interesting. In this case, the founders slash, I'll call them investors because they're really more on the investor side, were never operational in the business.
Hmm.
They own a bunch of businesses together. So they've always sort of had a hired leadership team. And, I feel like the founder of the second product, because it really was something that I came up with. But I do have a lot of experience to answer your question. I did work for a CEO peer-to-peer group for 3 years and watch this happen at a few of them. And it's not even just about the CEO, it's your whole leadership team. And I remember one person once getting up and explaining how they had to fire the best man at their wedding because everyone's different, and some people are the people that are going to get something off the ground, get it to $1 million of revenue, and then need to have someone come in and replace them. You have people that are going to take you from 1 million, 2 million to 5 million or 10 million, 10 million plus. So I think it's really going to depend on, the individual, but I think it also depends on what is someone's experience. If you're someone who has worked in HR for 10 years and you're running an HR tech company, maybe you have some experience that's going to take you through a little bit longer because you have that deep industry knowledge. If you're, I know the story about, someone who's a lawyer in New York and ends up starting a fast food chain, you're probably maybe a little bit sooner going to need someone to come in because you really don't have that industry knowledge or experience that's going to carry you through. So I'd say it's very case by case, and it'll depend on, of course, the prior success of that individual. And you also have people out there whose best skill is actually learning new things and executing new things. I think someone like myself, I do really well in doing things I've never done before and figuring things out. Once something's running a little bit smoother and you're not launching new things, probably I'm not the right person. At least I haven't been historically to really continue to take things forward. I've been more of a get it off the ground, launch it person, which is why it makes sense for someone like me to come into a company that was trying to pivot and do something different.
Yeah, so it sounds like you have a lot of entrepreneurial, characteristics within your personality or your desired stage of the business. You really want to grow that, launch, and then, like so many entrepreneurs, once it's launched, it sounds like it's kind of like, okay, I want to move on to the next challenge.
Yeah.
This is too easy now.
Yeah, I do think in this case, the idea of launching and then growing is very exciting because now it feels more like, even though I'm not the founder, it still feels more like my baby. So I have that desire to not just get it off the ground, but get it to a great level of revenue. But is that revenue 10 million or 25 million or 50 million? Once we get higher and you're running smoothly, yeah, maybe it's someone else who's going to have that better skill set to take it to that next level. And hopefully we get there. I'm obviously getting ahead of myself, but that's the dream.
But yeah, that's the plan, right? That's the strategy
That's
that
the
you're trying
plan.
to
Yeah.
trying to
Yeah.
deploy. So now you said the second product was the one that you kind of came up with when you
Yeah.
joined the team. So that is the talent one. That's right, Tilr
Right.
Talent.
Yeah.
And so Tilr Hire was what they were rolling with. And so you joined the company back in September, I
September.
think you said?
Yep. That's
Okay,
right.
so September, we're filming this right now. It's the beginning of July. And so you've been with the company for a little over 6 months.
I
Well, yeah,
think
that'd be like eight,
closer to about
nine
nine
months.
months, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
my math is not good this morning.
You're the second person in 2 days who's like, you've been there 6 months. And I was like, it feels longer.
so so in that period of time, I'm really curious. Like you come on, you saw this opportunity then with Tilr Talent, and you sort of pivoted to creating that, in addition to finishing what is happening on the Tilr Hire side of things. Is that because it's a kind of a unique situation in the sense that the owners, the ownership group, are more investors as opposed to people who were working within the business? Does that give you a lot more latitude to do that, or is this just something that it was just such a natural evolution of what you were doing, or addition to what Hire was, that it just made so much sense where the team just really jumped all over it?
Yeah, it does. I think, the two investors that started this business, they've started a lot of businesses together. They're very successful and very smart. And it's great to have them on the board and have that, advisory and that advice. But their experience is mostly not from technology. And so, I sort of brought that technology piece. And I think the reason the second product idea sort of stood out to me is, of all the jobs I've had, there's always one thing that I love the most, and that is getting people in roles where they're really happy and I can help them grow. And I've always found that a lot of people aren't intuitive enough or open enough to really give people these opportunities. And, we're in a world where I think our parents built their careers like this, and now people are building their careers like this. You want to try customer success, and then you want to try marketing, then you want to try product, and then you're like, oh, I'm going to go back to marketing, maybe in a more senior role. And so you're making lateral and upwards moves at the same time. And it's really hard for businesses, especially run by individuals who, always had the upwards trajectory, to understand. And so I thought, wow, what we're building can really help people understand this and help individuals succeed and help companies succeed at the same time. And so when I started thinking about it, we started interviewing a ton of people working in HR and people experience, and we got great feedback. And so our board and slash owners were like, yeah, this does make a lot of sense. And everyone got really excited. And especially because we applied to the Ontario government for a grant under something called the Skills Development Fund. And we were, very grateful to be recipients of that. And that really showed that we were also aligned with the research that the government was doing and the needs of, the country.
Yeah,
In
and
the
so
province in this case. Yeah.
yeah, so the province of Ontario, and so this grant that you received then under the banner of skills development, obviously you're helping other businesses develop the skills of their employees. So it seems, yeah, almost like a grant made specifically for your business in a lot of ways.
It does. It does. Sometimes you
Yeah,
read these grants and you're like, wow, like we're really aligned with the
yeah.
needs. And I think because I worked in that organization that was for entrepreneurs, I have this like deep-seated passion to see the Canadian entrepreneurs succeed. And so it was just marrying so many things together that I love. And then we built a team of people who really care about that, care about, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and doing things in an equitable way. Training is not really done in an equitable way. We talked
Mm.
about how it's done in small companies, but, despite the fact that I've had mostly startup roles, I did spend 3 years at a bank. And at the bank, I had, six-figure training budget. But it was like my boss gave that to me, and then I gave it to my directors, who gave it to their senior managers, who asked their people. And then everyone cycles back up with an Excel and a different format. And by the time, I sit down with my boss and the rest of his team, the year's over. And then the only people who have trained are your more privileged people who know how to get around process and
Mm.
waiting. And so, one, you're not training in an equitable way. Two, you're still not training strategically. And three, I wasted almost all of my six-figure budget because it's just so administratively heavy
Yeah.
that they don't get through it. And so we're really excited about having the top-down and bottom-up approach, because I think I hear this term high performer all the time. And when I look at people who are, tagged high performer, they're loud, they're making themselves known. And I
Mm.
didn't realize it until I got to the bank, where some of my highest performers were the quietest people sitting in corners. And it wasn't until I really paid attention myself that I was like, wow, nobody knows. And sometimes I try to get someone promoted And they'd say, oh, well, they haven't had enough visibility. And I'm like, yeah, that's because they're handling everything on their own. They're not escalating things. And so I think this gives a chance to those you don't know are high performers, to really, help themselves build their careers. And, we have this saying here at Tilr that I recently read a report from one of the big consulting firms that said there's not a lot of top talent out there. And I thought, that's crazy. Like almost everyone can be top talent if you get them in the right roles and continue to invest in them. And so that's what we're really trying to do.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's a great observation. Okay, so one thing that I'm really curious about is your take on AI in the future, what AI is going to have in terms of an impact on our workforce and the skills gaps that are going to be there. And the reason why I want to go down this road is I've been saying this now for a couple of years, that AI is going to be one of those things that are going to disrupt the marketplace, the workforce, in a way that no other kind of technological evolution or revolution has ever done. And so historically, as we've gone through, these big shifts, the industrial age and so on, it was usually the lower tier of the workforce that was disrupted. But with AI, I think it's going to be much more of the middle class type of and higher skilled, higher paying jobs, upper middle class workforce that's going to be disrupted. And I think this is the first time that this is ever going to have happened in mass in our society. And so that's going to have just profound impacts, I think, on our overall economic situation for the globe, because we're going to be losing, I think, the lawyers, the engineers, the accountants, anything that's very, very systems based. Those are going to disappear real quickly and be replaced with AI. So that's going to create this massive need in our society for retraining and skills development in a category of people that it's never touched before. I think your software is going to be right at the heart of that of the solution that's going to need to be deployed on a global basis. Is that something that you're looking at? Is that something that concerns you as well? What are your thoughts around this?
Yeah, I think you framed it actually so well. And yeah, I go through periods of time, especially at the beginning of AI, where I have a friend who's a futurist and I'd message him and be like, I'm never having kids, like AI. And he was like, okay, let's take a step back. And, I think he's right. Like there's always something like this that's going to be disruptive. And then that next generation is going to, I don't want to say make it better, but figure it out and, build upon it. So yeah, I think there's going to be huge disruption. I think you're right. It's going to be to, whole different jobs than it was before. And people will need to be reskilled and upskilled. But I think the other really big shift that has to happen is the mentality around transferable skills. Like people do not like to think about transferable skills at all. And, I always go back to customer service as an example. It's easiest to understand, like customer service roles are roles that can be fairly entry level because you can provide training and really get people up to speed. But you always see 3 years experience, 5 years experience. If someone worked as, a host in a restaurant or at the front desk of a hotel, how their skills don't translate into me a very obvious way into working in a customer service role, it's something that I fail to sort of understand. And this is a very basic example, but people are going to have to get used to that. I think past experience doesn't necessarily dictate future success. It's past success that dictates future success. And, obviously a doctor needs to train as a doctor. And, I'll say a computer engineer needs to train as a computer engineer, although there's a lot of great self-taught people. And I think we have accepted that in the tech space, but, you might have someone who was really successful in, a role that gets eliminated or changed by AI, and they might be applying to something completely different. And the question is, can they do it? Probably. I mean, if they're good at learning is going to become a really important skill, ability to adapt, ability to, just be willing. And the companies, this to me is the biggest mind shift, is will they accept transferable skills? Will they give people a chance? And I think, you're going to have to start hiring people with training plans in place. And you see it now. Companies can't hire. These roles are hard to hire. There's no talent. Well, what are you looking for? Are you looking for people that don't exist? Yeah, of course it's going to be hard to hire. But, if you have 12 skills you need for a role, why don't you identify the 5 that someone really needs to ramp right away? And then the rest of them, like, let's come up with a training plan, mentorship, courses. There's so much you can do. And to me, that's going to be the even bigger shift, is not the people. People are willing to learn and shift. It's the company's ability to, 1, accept it, and 2, actually adapt to embrace it.
Yeah, well said. So now we were talking a little bit about the journey of a career, a typical career, and it used to be, like you said, kind of a very linear, and now it's a meander, and a flow. People are going kind of all over the place. There isn't a point A, point B kind of straight line that can be drawn. In your experience, you've done some meandering, it sounds like, as well within your career. I am curious, if you were to sit down and pen a letter to, a 15-year-old Lea, what would you say? What advice would you give? What would that be in that letter, basically, that you're writing to your younger self?
Yeah, I think one is, to embrace that, like, I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves, and maybe it's changed because I'm, not part of Gen Z, and I just make it into, the millennials. I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to know what we want to do, but how could you possibly know what you want to do at the start of your career? And so I think for me, my success ended up being about chasing opportunities that were put in front of me that, were equally exciting and terrifying. I think this is how you grow. But I think just not pressuring to decide so early on what it is you want to do, because then you close yourself off to great learning and great experiences. And you chase something that, honestly, when you get there, you might not even like it. I mean, the first thing I chased in my career was not for profit. I really liked the idea of helping people and helping humanity. But the truth is, I couldn't take it because there's a lot of politics and there's a lot of donor pleasing, and like seeing $1 wasted was just like too stressful for me. And so eventually I met a businesswoman who said, like, what are you doing? Like, come work in business and volunteer. And like, she was right. And I'm glad I listened. But I think, you can spend a lot of time chasing the wrong thing. So I think, I tell myself, like, don't put that pressure early on to really decide what you do. And I think the other piece of advice, although I had a pretty controversial LinkedIn post about this, but, in a case where you have 2 job offers in front of you, both are market pay, and you're in a position where, maybe, they both will sustain your lifestyle. I've done it myself, and I see a lot of younger people still doing it, where you're like, yeah, this job seems boring, but it pays, an extra like 10, 15K a year. I'm going to take this, but you give up learning, you give up future earning potential. So, I think the other thing I tell myself is to have the mindset that careers are long, and that you have to look at positions, not just in the present, but what are they going to bring you in the future? Because, you want to make sure you are on an upwards trajectory.
Yeah. So, okay. So I'm really curious, your opinion on higher education then, because that is one of the things that gets people into this lock-in sometimes, right? Because it's a big investment, a number of years and dollars are placed into this trajectory, this career path that the higher education will actually put you into. And so then there's a lot of resistance then to do the meandering, maybe. So, and I should also just stress too that with Tilr, it's all about hiring for the skills. And like you were saying, there's a lot of transferable skills that are maybe disconnected from the actual career path. And so, or sorry, the education path that one was on. So higher education, is it relevant anymore?
Oh, I mean, I don't want to fully say no, but for me, school was, I was never engaged. I mean, from the time I got my first job at McDonald's when I was 15, I basically never focused on school. I'd always be working. I moved on to work at what was the Indigo Cafe. Eventually Starbucks took it over, but in Indigo, the bookstore ran their own cafe. I worked there for a long time, and I'd like leave at my lunch hour and go work for an hour and go back to school. In university, I think I spent, I didn't go to class a lot. I do have a degree. What I will say is my poli-sci undergrad, does it help me in my career? No. But did I learn how to get decent grades without going to class? Did I learn how to figure out what a professor wanted to put in an essay that would get a good grade without, really going deep into a topic? Like, I learned those skills, which I do think are valuable. So I think there are things beyond just the degree itself that, are of value. Can you learn those in other ways? Sure. And I think the answer is it depends on the person. If you want to be a doctor, education is always going to be important. If you want to be a dentist, anything in the medical field, a scientist, there's going to be education, higher education is always going to have its place. There's also a lot of people who like to learn that way. And I think higher education should be available to them, but definitely there's going to be a shift away from it being a requirement. And I think you're going to see equivalencies. And we already have some of our, we've heard this in a bunch of the customer interviews we've done, where, talent and recruiters are saying to us, we want equivalencies. Like, we want an MBA, or we want this type of experience and this number of years. And so I think you're going to see a lot more of that. And I think, MBA to me is the most interesting one, because I think it's the most highly debated. I think, again, like, I see people coming out of their MBAs, they go in way too young with not enough job experience, and they come out and they know theories, and actually it hurts them in the workplace.
Yeah.
But then if you do the right MBA at the right time in your career, and you do the right networking, MBAs about the networking side can really sort of change the course of your career. So I think there's always going to be a place for it, but the emphasis on it is going to drastically change. And it's going to become less of something people are like, oh, you didn't go to school. I mean, some of the most successful people I know didn't go to not just post-secondary, but some of them actually left in high school, and they started work early. They're brilliantly smart and ambitious, and it's going to change. And I think it already is changing.
I want to pick up on one thing that you were saying there in terms of, the hiring practices are maybe migrating a little bit away from saying, this is the degree or the master's that is required, or the equivalent in terms of experience and so on. And I would say what you're trying to do, though, is actually change that to, this is the equivalent skills that we're looking for, or more importantly, this is the skills we're looking for. If you happen to have an MBA or something else, that's great. But we're looking for these skills regardless of what your education is. And so that's where I'm just really wondering if it's going to be a real shift. If you're successful with this business, that'll actually encourage that shift away from putting so much emphasis on the education, checking that checkbox essentially. Because for me right now, when I'm looking at resumes, I'm using the education as a bit of a filter, is what I'm using. Because if you get a stack of 200 resumes, it's like, oh, like that's a lot to go through and really try to suss out who has the right skills. And so it's like, okay, well, let's just take all the ones that are, have the education that are typically would be beneficial in this job, assuming that the skills are going to be correlated to that, which they aren't necessarily the case. And then that's the smaller list then that you go through and start to identify. And so there has been this race over the last couple of decades in terms of so many more of the master's level education qualify or candidates, right, who have that higher education. And it seems like in order to get those great jobs, they're being told, well, you got to stand out by taking that next step up the ladder of higher education. But you maybe don't have to do that anymore when you have companies who maybe are just going to be hiring on skills using a tool like yours.
Yeah. And I think it's important to make that change, because, you have people that are looking at education, and then people that are looking at education from specific institutions. Like, we're only going to hire out of Harvard and U of T and the truth is, not everyone has access to one, like these elite schools, and not everyone has access to even going to a, master's degree or even a first degree. And so without even realizing, you end up having bias in your hiring practices, and you're passing up on not just amazing people, but getting in the right people to build diversity for the future, right? Like, you want to get in people who came from all different backgrounds and all different types of experiences. And I think one of the best ways to do it is to start looking at equivalencies, and also start looking at, what are someone's traits? I mean, it also matters, personality and behavioral, because you could have the top person and you invest in them a little bit. You have your superstar, and you've changed someone's life, and they've, changed your business. And so I think there's a lot of mutually beneficial things that can happen when we sort of strip away some of this standardized stuff that not everyone has access to.
Yeah, this is all completely fascinating. I could talk about this for hours and hours with you, Lea, but unfortunately, we're going to have to wrap it up. So, if somebody wanted to do a demo, though, of your software, how's the best way for them to reach out to you or to get connected with somebody who can do that demo?
Yeah, you can request a demo right on the website, tilr.com, or, happy to have people email me. It's just Lea, Leah at tilr.com. Super simple.
Yeah, and tilr.com, just to give us the spelling of that, because
Yeah.
that's not intuitive.
TILR. It's like
.com.
the tiller on the submarine that directs you. That's the that's the genesis behind the name.
Oh, awesome. Okay. Okay. So, well, thank you so much, Lea. I really appreciate you coming by today and talking a little bit about what the future of hiring and training and everything is going to be in terms of developing these people internally and hiring the right ones around skills, and how higher education has gone, and AI, we should be all worried about. No, you didn't say that, but there's a lot of really interesting things there. You guys are right at this really interesting intersection of so many exciting changes that are going to be like right around the corner, I think, for us. And so I just really anticipate a lot of really great things for Tilr. So congratulations on what you've created so far, and I wish you the best of luck as you continue to grow this.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
And for those of you who are listening, if you enjoyed this episode, you want to check out some of our archives, head over to amplifyyourbusiness.ca. That's where you're going to find that. And definitely join us or listen in on your favorite podcasting platform if you want to just catch the audio version. So just search for Amplify Your Business on any of the major platforms and you'll find us there. Until the next episode, everybody have a prosperous day.